Ooh, I can't hear you.
Hello?
Hey, here we
There
are.
we go. Hey, yay for technology, guys. But anyway, hey, I just wanted to say thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no
Welcome to
problem.
the show.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. Glad the dead period's over. Glad we got some things to talk about.
That we do. And we'll go ahead and jump right into it, man. Obviously, this dead period ended May 31st. I've been waiting for what feels like forever.
Yes.
And now that is coming to an end. Obviously, June 1st, kids are able to visit campuses. So we'll talk more about the official visits, things like that from Georgia's perspective. But I want to take a little bit of time maybe to reflect on, this extended dead period and maybe give some takeaways here for what we think we can take away from the future, right? Just in case something like this were to
Mm-hmm.
happen again. Give some things like that right there, right? I think that would be some good takeaways. First, I think the with COVID, it makes everything difficult. Um, but I think it could have been ended. I think it could have ended sooner. I have a, or I think I talked about this a little while back. My plan to get rid or to open back up schools, right, safely and for these
Mm-hmm.
visits. But nonetheless, obviously, that didn't happen. What are your takeaways from this extended dead period?
Well, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I think it could have gone. I think it could have been ended a lot sooner. I think when they started bringing fans back into the stands, especially at places like Texas A&M, where they allowed full capacity back in the fall, I think you probably could have hosted some recruits. I get all the liability stuff, and I understand that, and that's a big factor in all this. But I think there could have been ways that universities could have set up safe spots, social distancing, and things like that with the visits, or spread them out a little bit more. Maybe had not as many as they normally do. Like I know with Georgia, they probably could have cut it in, I guess, quarters even, to be able just to host someone or some people in some of these games where they had, I guess, 20% capacity, 25% capacity. It's not quite the same experience, and maybe but they would have gotten creative with it like they did with the other protocols, and they would have gotten around it. They would have been safe, things like that. So I wouldn't worry about that. So, but the biggest takeaways is like coaches learned how to video conference. Coaches learned how to evaluate without bringing kids to camp, which I think is going to advance scouting and trying to project kids to the next level. It makes it a bit of a mystery as well, but I think that if you can find ways to do it without having to get them on campus, you can maybe make offers a lot sooner.
I agree with you there. You talked about learning how to Zoom call, things like that. Man, I can't go without talking about Saban, right? Everybody knows how
Mm-hmm.
Saban is. So
Yep.
I can only laugh, not in a bad way, not toward him or anything, but just laugh having to trying to picture Saban doing a
Yes.
virtual call, right? I think
Yeah.
to me it's just hilarious, but I mean that's the times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Alabama didn't slow down one bit. Obviously with
No,
the
they didn't.
first ranked class this past season for the 2021 cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at this right here, obviously there's tons of kids, right? Not even just the 2022 cycle, but several classes out, right? 2023, 2024,
Mm-hmm.
jumping on these visits to these schools. With the hope, with the fear that there could be another, extended dead period. So I would like to think that you don't see that, but it's a fear that kids have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But moving on to Georgia, right?
Right.
I think the timing of the new facility opening up is, I think they meant to do that on purpose almost.
They did. It's brand new. I mean, I don't know if like originally when they started building it that they knew there was going to be some sort of coincidence with the release of the dead period and the timing of it opening. But
Yep.
I do think that once they got into it, maybe because it was supposed to open back in April and it didn't. Obviously, there were some construction delays. Some of it probably by design. I mean, Kirby's really intelligent when it comes to striking while the iron's hot and getting the new, oh, hey, dead period just opened. Hey, look what we just moved into. Like we're still moving stuff over. Check this out, And it's definitely there's some timing involved in that. And he probably said, hey, let's push back the opening of this. Let's slow down construction a little bit so we can open this right at dead period. We can release these videos. Dead period ends in a week and a half after we release these videos, and it'll give us time to say, hey, we got some new digs, and then it'll give them a week and a half to move everything over and get everything set up.
Yeah, and I know obviously Georgia posted some hype videos, some teasers, shall you say, with the players, the coaches moving in.
Yep.
And honestly, from a fan standpoint, I just want to go ahead and see what it is right now. I just want to see what it's about.
I guess June 1st we will. I think they're holding back by design as well too.
No, it's strategic. We know it's strategically planned. I think you have to do that. But at the end of the day, though, and I'm talking about the strategic planning here. Let the recruits see this first, right? Mm-hmm. Let the recruits, that be their first visit, right? Because a lot of these kids haven't visited a school, period, right? At least on an official or unofficial visit standpoint, right? They may have went to campus, but they didn't tour the facilities like you're about to be able to do. Exactly. So, with that being said, a lot of these kids, their first ever visit is going to be Georgia. And we can talk about that a little bit later too. But their first experience of a world-class facility, obviously brand new. And I've been talking about this for several months now, for really as long as it's been a thing. The arms race in facilities, it's a completely true thing. You look at Clemson, right? I had a guy on from Clemson that he covers, was talking about having a putt course, and obviously we've seen the slide that they had. So these things right here, it's really useful to attract elite recruits, in my opinion, because they spend so much time there. You need it to feel like home, and I think that obviously we don't know yet, but I have a good feeling that these kids it'll make them feel comfortable and feel at home, and it'll do really good things for recruiting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And anytime you can open some new bells and whistles and things like that, anytime that you can wow recruits, that's always important. That's always on the forefront. Hey, look at what we can do. And then you can come in behind that with the coaching staff that he's assembled and the playmakers that they have gathered and the film that they've put up the last 4 or 5 games of last season. You can show recruits, hey, you're going to work out here. You're going to eat here. You're going to enjoy your time here. And then, hey, let's turn on the film and let's watch what you're going to do while you're here in this offense, or watch what you're going to do as a part of this defense. And so it's exciting times to be Georgia. I think there's a lot of big things on the brink.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And with Georgia too, we're in heavy battles with a lot of these elite recruits, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the teams that we're in battles with. You look at Ohio State. You look at Alabama. I don't really want to say Florida anymore. I don't trust Florida with Dan Mullen in recruiting. I think you can probably agree with this. But nonetheless, you still have to worry about Clemson and a lot of schools, really good schools. A&M's becoming a true threat now, at least this year so far, right? So
yeah, Jimbo knows how to recruit. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely, and I think their recent success kind of helps plant a little bit of recruiting stronghold there too. And Florida State, and I know I'm not trying to go dig a rabbit hole, but Florida State is completely surprising me right now with regards to their recruiting with Norvell there.
Yeah, they are. They just had to get their feet wet. They had to get some sort of positive momentum. But I mean, Tallahassee is a great place, and the campus and Doak Campbell and all the tradition that Florida State has. They just need to re-tap into that. And I think Norvell is going to take his experiences, most recently at Memphis to take that down to Tallahassee. So that's going to be a threat for Georgia, especially in the southwestern part of the state.
Absolutely. And So obviously we talked about these facilities, right? But it's not only that, right? It's the face-to-face
Uh-huh.
conversations with these recruits and
Mhm.
coaches and their families. Really, a lot of recruiting comes from recruiting the family. So obviously Zoom calls worked, but it's not the same.
Mm-mm.
So obviously from a fan standpoint, I think it's going to benefit Georgia. We looked at the 2021 cycle, right? There were some key misses on some targets that we were thinking about, and I think a lot of that, personally, at least my take, was the inability to really, I don't know if it was adapt, but I feel like our coaching staff does a way better job when you're able to physically be face to face.
Right.
So, now that that's a thing, I genuinely think that recruiting is going to pick up, and we're already number one in the country based off of 24/7.
Right.
Is where I go off of. I think it can only get better from here. Kids are able to see these facilities. They're able to tour campuses and meet up with other elite prospects. Right. This is
Right.
why recruiting is so fun, because it's so you don't know. But I genuinely think that Georgia is going to have a great recruiting, and it's going to pick up right now.
Yeah, it is. It is. And anytime you can get face to face, that's the biggest key. I mean, you can Zoom call all you want, you can FaceTime all you want, and you see these recruiting assistants. They FaceTime with recruits and they go different places. So I mean, I guess that's the best way during a pandemic to get a tour of the facilities is have one of the recruiting assistants or GAs or whatever walk around with FaceTime. I've seen numerous programs do that, but for Kirby to sit down in front of a family, for Matt Luke to sit down in front of a family, or Cortez Hankton, or Dan Lanning, or whoever it may be, to be able to sit down in front of that family, in front of that kid, and just let them feel that presence of family and let them feel that comfort of being at University of Georgia. That's or any school really. You could insert school name here, and everyone's going to benefit from face-to-face interactions. But I think that's the biggest key is obviously the face-to-face and being able to impress the parents and impress the kid and really leave a lasting impression on those families and give them something really difficult to think about. Whereas in the pandemic, it was like, oh, that was a cool Zoom call, or oh, that was cool, and
Oh yeah.
they go through without really giving it much thought because eventually Zoom calls all run together and they become the same, and you kind of just pick what program is the most successful at that point, which I think it's going to be an interesting year for these freshmen to see who emerges where and what and who is comfortable. I mean, I think that's why the transfer portal is so crazy with these recent signees, because a lot of these kids are seeing the schools and campuses they signed on for the first time ever, and they're maybe rethinking their decision. So I think you're going to see less of that. I think it's going to all calm down, and I'm excited for it. I'm just glad that that's Kirby's strong suit is face-to-face interactions, and we're finally getting back to that. Uh-oh, lost you. I don't know if you can hear me, but yeah. Mm-mm. Still can't. No. I can read your lips.
Well then,
There we go. Yeah, I got you now.
God Almighty, technology, man, we're having some technical
You gotta love it,
difficulties
right?
on that today.
This is how I imagine Saban. This is what I imagine Saban going through when he's trying to
Except he's
Zoom call
cussing.
somebody.
He's cussing up a storm. Yeah.
Oh, he's probably fired 3 assistants by now.
Oh no, but one of the things with this recruiting too, before we start looking at the guests, I do want to look into these visits, but I do want to talk about the possibility and expectations, really, for that matter, of decommitments and also commitments. Right? Everybody wants to focus on the commitment aspect from a Georgia
Right.
standpoint. Keep in mind that there is a possibility for decommitments as well.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously,
Interesting.
obviously we want to keep the guys that we have. But there's a lot. There is a good chance, I think, with these official visits coming on, that
Mm-hmm.
there is a chance for a flip or a decommitment. Tell me, how do you feel about the possibility of the commitments and the decommitments?
Well, I mean, it's already prevalent in recruiting before the pandemic. It's probably going to be I don't know, with this cycle reemerging, I think you're going to get a lot more than you usually do, which is fine. We're going to lose people, but we're going to gain people as well that were committed elsewhere that we were in for. And when they finally take the official visits and they reevaluate things, there's some people that we'll get that we didn't already have, and there'll be people that we lose. It's just part of the recruiting game. That's just part of, kids reevaluating based on what they see and feel in person versus what they evaluated over Zoom and FaceTime and virtual tours and watching games on TV. So you're going to get it. It's going to be actually fans are going to have to be a little bit more patient with that because it's going to happen. There's you could probably take a fourth of our list and say they're not going to stay committed, but you can go to Alabama's, a fourth of their class is going to be decommitted and go elsewhere. Same with Clemson, same with Ohio State, same with A&M, same with Notre Dame, same with Tennessee, same with Florida, and so on and so forth. You're going to see it all over the place, and it's just it's going to be. I don't want to say the word new normal because that makes my skin crawl, but it's going to be at least for this year's class, for the 2022 class, you're going to see that more frequently than normal. And then I think once we get a full in-person regular recruiting cycle under the belt, everything will kind of go back to the way it was.
No, I agree with you there. Looking at for me, I think you take the off year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I felt bad for the kids in the 2021 cycle, right? Weren't able to actually take a visit. Fortunately, some of them had toured Georgia before the shutdown and the extended dead period, so that did help. But a lot of kids weren't able to really do their official visits. You know what I mean? Obviously, I talked with Greg, Brock's dad, and we had into a little conversation about the everybody remembers, at least Georgia fans, the unofficial visit, basically, that Brock basically toured himself or hosted himself,
Yeah. I mean, that's the great thing about being in Athens.
I mean, it really helped if you think about it. Obviously having Brock in the fold and being a vocal recruiter really saved, I think, our recruiting class. I don't know about saving it, but I think it definitely helped it, if anything.
It got Amarius Mims. I thought Amarius Mims was going to Tennessee, and I think Brock saved that one.
I think so. I think Tennessee was a big threat there too. So having the fact that he could go and do kind of the unofficial official, I think that salvaged the recruitment for Georgia. But let's keep it on the 2022, I guess. These kids, they've committed without seeing these schools, but and I think Kirby's playing it right here. And you look at the current class, 75% is made up from kids within the state. Mm-hmm. So, looking at that right there, these kids, are within driving distance, every one of them, to go visit the school whenever. So, the fact that we have such a statewide recruiting class so far, I think benefits us with the ease of having to worry about true decommits. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but I definitely think it benefits us from having to worry about these decommitments.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when you look at the Alexander kid from Fort Worth, that one kind of worries me now because A&M and Texas are still hot after him. You don't know based on where he's from how solid he is, but you get him on campus, and restoke that fire, he might be more solid than we think. The Jalen Walker kid from North Carolina, you look at him and wonder because he's an out-of-state kid from North Carolina. But then you look at Jordan Bryant James from Murfreesboro. That's a short drive. It's just about the same drive as the kids from like Tifton, Tyree West, and Baxley, and Bainbridge, and the kids from South Georgia. It's a very similar drive from Murfreesboro. This is more my neck of the woods. So I think I think he'll be solid. But it's just about getting these kids back on campus and reaffirming their commitment, which I think most of them are pretty solid. I think they were heavy Georgia to begin with, regardless. Yep. And I think it'll take a lot of work even to get Keelan Alexander to flip. But I think if there's any school that could get Alexander, is probably going to be Texas. This is the one I worry about the most with Sarkisian. I'm I'm pretty solid on the rest of them, and Gunnar Stockton is especially. You worry about Auburn with Mike Bobo there, but I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be. I think the ones we got are going to be pretty solid for the most part, but hang on because there's more to come. It's about to get interesting.
Absolutely. I look at it in this sense right here. The recruiting cycle is just beginning right now. With the fact that you're opening up, but take what we've got in the fold right now. Obviously we talked about it. 8 of the 12 are within the state. So I think those guys are, I would say, more of a lock to stay. I think you could look at Smoke Bowie as perhaps being a potential decommit just because of the ties with Williams at Texas A&M. In the huge part of his commitment there. So that's something that you really have to worry about, at least that I am kind of keeping an eye out for.
Yeah, but I think so too.
When it comes to these out-of-state guys, right? Bear, Alexander, I Bleav, I think you do have to worry about. I think Texas A&M is a threat there, but I think he's solid to Georgia. From what you listening to interviews and watching him and everything, like it seems like he's ready to just come here. At least I got the feeling. Jalen Walker, basically right up the road for me. I think he made that commitment, but I don't think it's over with him. You always have to worry about Clemson, and being from North Carolina, Clemson has a grasp on this state, and Georgia's trying to pry that grasp away. Georgia came in and hit some huge targets in the past. Gurley and Zeus, and now you're seeing Jalen Walker is just the most recent example, and now they're trying to work even harder to pick up Travis Shaw from Greensboro, which is literally right in my backyard, basically. So. Yes. So you sit there, and obviously, I think keeping Jalen Walker in the fold is going to be huge for Travis Shaw. I really do. They're really close. So I think as long as Jalen Walker is committed to Georgia, I think that's going to play a huge part. Not saying it'll be the deciding factor or whatever, but I do think it'll play a huge part in keeping Georgia in that race.
Yes,
if that makes sense.
It does. I think that having Zamir and having some of that recent success in North Carolina does give us a leg up over Clemson. For a lot of if we're battling with Clemson, it's going to come down to that game in Charlotte. I think that I don't know if I can't keep up with some of these rule changes that they have, but I think they allow whoever's the designated home team gets to host recruits.
Well, on the neutral site.
I think so, because I think that was a Georgia Florida thing. Like every other year we got to host recruits there.
I never paid attention to that. I was worried that
I'd heard that. I don't know if they had changed that or amended it. I could be completely wrong on that. I've been wrong before, but I mean, either way, it's going to be an important matchup with Clemson in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think with the. Kind of going to Jacksonville, right, with the neutral site games. I would like to see them be more home and home. I don't think you can actually host recruits. They have to come on their own dime for a neutral site. I think. But if that's the case, what was that?
Yeah, I think there's some sort of like, I don't know. There's more. I think there's more layers to that rule. But yeah,
I think so too. But I think if Kirby's been kind of one of the guys that he wants to bring on guys to school, to campus as often as he can. Heard him in the past talking about you lose a week in recruiting at the cocktail party, even though it's a cocktail party and Jacksonville has a huge tradition, right? There's a huge Georgia fan base there too.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to worry about the issue of losing that home game every year. Or every other year, I should say. So, I see his point, right? I see his point for sure, hosting recruits for these official visits, because I guarantee you a ton of kids would go to Georgia the week of the Florida game if it was in Sanford Stadium. There's no question about it in my head. So I see his point there. But obviously, nonetheless, you get a huge marquee matchup, and, that's still exposure on the whole world, basically the whole world can see it, but for sure all of America is going to see it being in prime time on that day. So
exactly, and probably game day is going to be there, and there's a lot of things you can do with that to be able to market yourself. So, and two programs that have no problem marketing themselves with Clemson and Georgia. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's going to be great for recruiting. I think you're going to see a lot of things happen with that. So there's going to be some battleground stuff within the Carolinas that Georgia's going to have to fight with if they're going to be more of a presence, not only in the Southeast, but in the United States. I was reading about this kid from Kansas that they're trying to get named Jaron, and I'm going to butcher this last name, Jaron Kanak. He had a 10.37 laser timed 100-meter dash. He's 6'2", 210. He's an athlete. So I think it's going to be something like getting kids like that with this dead period being lifted. I think it opens the door because I don't know that we would have a chance at this kid. I would think he would be all Oklahoma, or even with the recent hire of Lance Leopold to Kansas, like maybe the Jayhawks have a chance with this kid. But being able to get a kid like this on campus is huge for Kirby Smart.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you kind of see it now. I mean, see if you with me on this one. Obviously, it seems like Kirby's changed his mentality for recruiting. I think you're looking at a lot of guys that have elite speed. Kirby goes and recruits them heavily now.
Yes.
Obviously we got Jermaine Burton, which is, really fast. And then Arian Smith was just world-class fast.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to see these other guys, right? Like Evan Stewart is another one. The guy you just mentioned is, you start to see these guys running 10 threes and Kirby's going after them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm curious if that's, what do you think? Do you think it was a philosophy change on the offense, the reason why he's recruiting them so much?
Yes, I think you see guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle go in the first round and be difference makers for an offense for Alabama. I think woke up not only Kirby, but a lot of people. So there's a high emphasis on speed guys now, not necessarily the huge guys that can jump ball. I mean, there's a spot for them, obviously, but the Arian Smiths, the Jermaine Burtons, the guys that can stretch the field vertically, it is of utmost importance. And if you can get a guy like that has world-class speed, you're going to be in really good shape, and you're going to have a really good vertical threat. And I think that, I said on my show, there's 1.5 million clues if you really look at this Georgia team carefully of some philosophy changes on offense. This is now clue number 1,127 that Georgia has some philosophy changes going on offense. They're starting to recruit elite speed, which means, to me, they're going to push the ball vertically a lot more frequently.
I completely agree. And I think that's something that you kind of saw change over, the last couple of years, right? You look at, I hate, and I'm going to piss a lot of people off with this, but Coley, I think Coley was that transition coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
But when Monken came in, maybe it's just me thinking this, but I think, Monken told him to kind of let me run the offense. Coley was
that dude. Yeah. I don't think Monken comes in. I don't think Monken comes in from the NFL without some assurances that he's going to run the offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, you just looked like Coley's offense had, in my opinion, Kirby's handprint all over it. Trying to establish the run game constantly, and there was really no true threat in the pass game. Right now, credited, we didn't have a ton of receivers. We lost a ton of talent. Cager was injured, but when he showed flashes. Kieris was somewhat consistent. But we really relied on Swift and the run game. And obviously, it's almost like a night and day flip from Coley to Monken. You start to see, obviously at the beginning of the year and most of the year, we had the question at quarterback and, especially against Arkansas, right? DeJuan to Stetson, and then Stetson ran it there. There were still some questions, at least to me, how, obviously we knew we were going to see some changes, but, were we limited by Stetson, right? And I think a lot of people were, waiting for JT to come back. I think, it made sense for him to take his time and ease his way in, but a lot of people were eager to see the changes that we really were expecting.
Eager, yes.
Now, at the end of the day, obviously the offseason not being there kind of played a part too. But nonetheless, though, right? We come in Mississippi State, right? And I watched this recently, actually. Just watched how dedicated they were and how much of an effort they put on stopping the run and overwhelming the offensive line. And I really don't believe if JT was not playing quarterback, I think we lose that game. I think Stetson was limited, getting the ball down the field. Now he had the mobility. I'm not going to say he didn't, but definitely, getting the ball down the field. Obviously, JT showed that, which is why I think really we won the game. 400+ yard game there. And then kind of balanced out, right? You look at the last 4 games, passing, and then run against South Carolina, and then just overall like blowout against Missouri, and then obviously the really really close come from behind win against Cincinnati. So looking at those 4 games, to me, I'm anxious. I'm very eager to see what our offense looks like first game with a full off season. JT fully healthy. I think his leg, his knee, having extra time right there, right, to recover and get more healthy is going to make the difference, because just watching from a quarterback standpoint, I was a quarterback in high school. The mechanics cause him to not be able to throw it like he needed to, right? Like the Arian Smith throw, right? Obviously, we know Arian Smith is super fast. He's blazing fast.
Mm-hmm.
But the right mechanics gets that ball in stride and scores. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's some things we're looking forward to, and I think having the off, him being fully ready to go and learn the offense with the California trip as well, right? Getting that chemistry. I think you're looking at an explosive offense. And let's be honest, that explosive offense is going to be really, really enticing to a lot of elite recruits.
Yeah, you're seeing an uptick in wide receiver recruiting now because of it. And so I think that when you look at let's look at starting in January of 2020, we get that transfer from obviously we get Jamie Newman coming over from Wake Forest, and we know how that went. Then several weeks later, we get JT Daniels. Well, we know he's rehabbing from major knee surgery. When you're in a COVID period, just being isolated, not having as much or as strenuous of a rehab as he probably normally would on campus,
mm-hmm.
I think made a huge difference. He had a few setbacks because of it. He didn't get to work out the way he wanted to. He wasn't in the facilities eating like student athletes eat. So there was a lot of factors that set JT Daniels back and caused him not to be ready, not only for the Arkansas game, but for every subsequent game up until Mississippi State. Stetson, I love Stetson. He was great, but he was extremely limited. He was great for what he was. He was always going to be a bridge guy, but he was a good complement to the run game. He could hurt you in several different ways. Mind you, Georgia was the only team that led Alabama at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into moral victories, but I guess if you had to look at one positive from that experience, we were the only team to do so. So when you look at that, you can say, okay, Stetson's not as bad as we think, but he is limited in getting the ball downfield. If you put pressure on him, he can't stretch you vertically. He can't do some things that normally quarterbacks with a little bit more arm talent can do. Then JT Daniels steps in. He's not right still because there's some throws he wasn't able to step into. His mechanics were probably really rusty because he probably didn't get to develop and work. He probably missed a full year's worth of fundamental work just on that he's going to be able to gain now since he's the starter in this offseason. He's going to get to work out with the guys, so he's going to get a lot more chemistry. So I think what you're going to see is you're exactly right. You're going to see an extremely explosive offense. I think there's a lot of weapons. I think in that first game, you're going to see Todd Monken searching for his number one playmaker, right? You're going to see him take shots to Arian Smith. You're going to see Jermaine Burton get fed. You're going to see Kyrus. You're going to see Darnell Washington. You're going to see even some Brock Bowers. You're going to find – or James Cook. You're going to see where this offense is going to go, who's going to be that go-to guy to fill in for Pickens when to make a tough catch or a big catch when it's desperately needed in a situation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who that's going to be. It could be any one of those guys, and any one of those guys they all have different qualities that make them viable. Like James Cook is a threat running He's a threat as a running back. He's also a threat in the screen game. He's also a
Yep.
threat even in the passing game.
Yeah,
Darnell
we saw what he
Washington,
did against Alabama, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, he went off. Darnell Washington is LeBron James out there, tight end. So he's a nightmare for matchup wise. There's not a linebacker that's fast enough to cover him. There's not a safety that's physical enough to cover him, and there's very few corners in this league that are tall enough to really contend with them. So you get some matchup nightmares there. Brock Bowers is showed out in the spring game. He's pretty good. Donnie Mitchell is somebody that I think is going to come on and be more of a kind of a deep threat guy or like a red zone jump ball guy. Arian Smith's world-class speed. Jermaine Burton is a great route runner, and Kyrus Jackson is the same. So I think you're going to see a very creative offense.
I think with what you were telling me right here, to add on to your point, I think you look at a multi-dimensional offense, right? Mm-hmm. You look at the ability to run the ball, right? There's no question we can run the ball. Yes. However, when it comes to the pass game, you look at the ability to hit all different parts of the field, right? You have niches basically from each receiver that can do multiple things. You look at the running backs, out in the flats or running your bubble routes, right? James Cook, angle routes. You look at, Kyrus, can hit down low in the flat or like cutting across kind of intermediate to short range if you need to. But then you got, guys along the sideline, right? You got, obviously Pickens being out. Pickens was our, huge one-on-one guy. But you look at Justin Robinson. I think Justin Robinson has a year where he can step in if everything works out well. Obviously, Arian Smith hitting the next level of the field that we haven't really seen in quite. Mm-hmm. And then obviously, like you said, Darnell Washington in the middle. So you're able to hit different parts, really all different parts of the field, and it really makes the offense that much more dangerous because of the ability to go anywhere on the field. You can't do what Mississippi State did and stop the run. You can try it, but we're able to get out and JT's shown that we can make that work and beat you that way. You have to respect the pass game. I expect Clemson to come out. I expect them to respect the pass game, but let's be honest here. Brazee, Miles Murphy, KJ Henry and company on that line in the front seven, they're going to cause problems just themselves. So they can rush 7 or they can blitz 4 or 5 and still cause problems for JT. Mm-hmm. This is why it's our biggest test of the year, hands down. Obviously in the regular season, right? We don't know what to expect in the postseason, even though we kind of do. If we make it to Atlanta, I have a feeling it's Bama, but nonetheless, right? Yeah. In the regular season, Clemson's our biggest test. So we're going to see right away what we're looking like. But then after week 1, we have the rest of the season really to kind of tune up, and if we take care of business, get ready, for Atlanta and for the playoffs. I think Georgia's destined to be the playoff team this year. Mm-hmm. But obviously it's about execution.
Yeah, we got to go out and execute. We got to go out and do the things that are going to take advantage of the playmakers that we do have in place. I think that now you can't say that we are void of talent at the wide receiver position. Mm-hmm. You can't say that we don't have a running game. We have 5 legitimate running backs that could start at anywhere in this conference. Yep. And for any of the big boys outside of the SEC, they could start for them too. So you've got all this talent. Now you got to figure out how to use it. And you got to figure out how to hurt people with it. I mean, I think with Monken, with his background, I think this is his wheelhouse because at Oklahoma State, he did it with a lot of 10 personnel, right? No tight ends, four wide, and was able to have a semblance of a run game. They still had some decent balance there when he was there breaking records at Oklahoma State. Then he goes to Southern Miss, right? He doesn't have many receivers. He has 2 really good running backs, Jalen Richard and Ito Smith. So it was a lot of 20 personnel, probably a lot of 20, 21 personnel, which is some things he can break out for Cook and Zamir and Darnell Washington, or he could go 3 wide, 2 backs and really do some damage there as well. He can also get into 11 personnel. He can get into any personnel grouping he wants. He can get into 32 personnel if he wants. He's got Bowers, Darnell Washington, 3 really stud running backs.
Don't forget Fitzpatrick either. Fitzpatrick is underrated right now. Definitely a good blocker, but he can still get out there and make some plays as well. But I think all odds are going to be on Darnell.
Not to cut you off, but yeah. Yeah.
But no, yeah.
Absolutely.
Obviously, like you were talking about, though, right? You look at the offense and Monken's potential for opening up the offense and really showing that Georgia has made that change. We saw Bama make the change early. Georgia kind of sluggishly lagged behind, and now I
Mhm.
think this is the year you really look at Georgia as not the true running team anymore that we're
No,
used to be.
no.
But let's be honest here. So moving on, right? We're going to transition with what you were talking about, right? With this offense, you look at this offense and it brings a lot of potential from a recruiting standpoint, which is why June is so important. Just
Yes.
this month alone, the list for elite recruits, whether it be offense or defense, it's huge, and there's some huge names there. Really looking at it here, June 1st, the very first day, you look at Pierce Spurlin, right, 2023 tight end.
Yeah.
You've got several names there just on the first day alone, and then June 2nd, you look at two huge recruits in the 2023 cycle coming on June 2nd with LT Overton, the number one overall player in the country, and Justice Haynes, right, forced
Yes.
up running back. So
That's a
you,
big one right there.
those are two huge ones. So then you look at then the weekend, right? That first weekend is going to be insane. Jeremiah Alexander on the third. But then you look at the fourth and the fifth. You're bringing in Brandon Ennis, right? You're bringing Kristen Miller, Denylon, Oscar, Branson Robinson. Everybody's loving Branson Robinson now.
Hmm.
Kamari Wilson, Nichols and Kojo, all on that first weekend alone, and those are huge names that Georgia's all in. So you look at that right there. Then you kind of piece it around. Big names here. Look at Shamar Stewart on the 15th. Then what I call IMG weekend.
Yeah.
You look at the guys.
Yes.
Really, four guys from IMG: Tyler Booker, Keon Sabb, Dalen Everett, and Jihad Campbell, all on their officials. On the 18th. So you look at that weekend, right? And
Yeah.
that's huge IMG, which I think Georgia is going to have a great year when it comes to these guys from IMG. And then we'll end it up with the 25th, right? The biggest name in the 2023 cycle, in my opinion, outside of LT Overson, Arch Manning. He'll be in,
Mhm.
I think he'll unofficial here. And that right there just tells you all of June, from the first day all the way to basically the end of June, Georgia's going to be loaded. And outside of visits alone, you're also looking at camps, right? They're also
Mhm.
getting guys on and camping and offering other guys too.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very, very busy and chaotic month for Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're cramming a whole recruiting cycle into a month there with all these visits. But with the early signing period, it's important. June became even more crucial than it ever has been. And coming off a pandemic year, that amplifies it by 10. So, you got in that first round of visits, the June 4th weekend, you got a bunch of guys from Mississippi coming in,
Yep.
as your big out of state targets. You got a couple of receivers. Kojo is one of them from Lambert. He's somebody that excites me. He's a 6-foot guy that can run. You have some offensive linemen, Addison Nichols, I think, coming in at tackle, 6'5", 305. Really solid 5.9 guy from you've got Oscar Delp. I think you mentioned him, big tight
Yep.
end. He's somebody that's exciting. He kind of fits that Brock Bowers, Fitzgerald mold.
Yep.
Then the IMG crew. I'm excited about Booker as the tackle. I think if we can get him, that'll be a huge get. You're starting to see that position almost become a big skill position. With the on the offensive line. Keon Sabb, I think, is somebody that is very universal. He's a big time, big tall kid. Probably going to fit in on the defensive side of the ball, if I had to guess. Jalen Walker is a very important piece to that June 18th weekend because he's a verbal commit, and he can kind of help from the player perspective. He can kind of help the coaching staff lock in a lot of these guys, right?
Oh
He
yeah,
can
absolutely.
be a recruiter. He could, because he knows a little bit about Athens. He knows a little bit about what this coaching staff is all about. Some of these
Mhm.
guys, I mean, obviously they've been in contact with Georgia. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be visiting. But I think Jalen Walker knows this coaching staff on a different level, and we'll see how solid he is if we can get even half of these IMG guys committed that weekend. I think we're in really, really good shape. And then you look at the 25th with Arch Manning headlining that group. I mean, that name speaks for itself. I watched his highlights the other day. There was this throw he made that was just it was kind of like the Zach Wilson throw from the combine that everybody's oohing and on about. If we could get Arch Manning, if we can steal him from Tennessee and Ole Miss, which you have to think that those two schools are leading the charge. If you don't know the Manning family very well, you wouldn't obviously know that. But you have to outlast Tennessee, which these days is not hard to do. And then Ole Miss is probably the one that's the most contentious with Arch Manning because they're exciting. They play a really good brand of football and family legacy. All those factors in for Georgia to be in the mix says a lot about Kirby Smart and crew.
Yeah, we'll kind of work our way back a little bit. Looking at Arch Manning though, right? Arch Manning's the type of that really obviously the name sticks out, but at the end of the day, Georgia is a true threat right there. And honestly, in my opinion, I think we get them. I really do. And I know the legacy, right? The legacy of Tennessee with with Uncle Peyton and Ole Miss with Grandpa Archie. I just think where Georgia is right now, Georgia's in that prime spot to elevate to a true national title contender on a consistent basis, right? And you can't discredit Alabama. They're going to push, and LSU, sure. I just don't trust LSU where they are. I just don't see LSU being the biggest threat there. But you look at Bama and Georgia. I think it's going to be a Bama Georgia, and I think Georgia is a true threat that people need to really start to pay attention to. So from obviously from Arch Manning, because if you get Arch Manning is the type of kid that you would look and take over Gunner. In my opinion, I would. He's already ready to go.
I love
Gunner too, but I think you would have to take Arch over Gunner. And as crazy as that sounds, and honestly, I look at it as because he's NFL ready. Like he's literally, you just sit there and let him play a few years in college and go to the NFL. I think he'll be fine. The kid is composed. He knows how to read defenses. There's nothing. Obviously, the Manning bloodline. I guarantee they've taught him everything he needs to know. You're not going to surprise the kid. I mean, obviously the speed. Adjust to the speed. But if he comes to Georgia, that puts us as a true national title contender. Because obviously we like JT, we like Brock, what they're able to do. But you have the guy with the composure and ability to, to be a true quarterback, right? Like you don't have to worry about these game managers like in the past. What felt like huge deal right there. I think Georgia's a huge threat for Arch Manning. So keep that, keep that in the back pocket and listen on whenever you're ready. But then we talk about Keon Sabb, right? Keon Sabb, Georgia just offered his brother, right? And that's a 2026 commit, 7th grade. Earliest commit ever, right? Earliest offer ever, I should say. Sorry.
I love that.
But that's a typical thing that you see, and Georgia's done it in the past, right? It's the Sorey brothers, or the Soreys. Obviously get Xavier, and then his brother committed already. So Georgia's one of those legacy teams. It's one of those programs where legacies happen. You look at Marcus Washington, right? Same situation. Justice Haynes is a good possibility. That's another one. So it's insane. El Muschamp and his walk-on quarterback son on the same team right now.
Exactly.
So Georgia, it's not uncommon for Georgia to do something like that. But it's kind of interesting to see that though because of the timing is not coincidental. It's strategically done that way. Considering, Keon's a huge threat and Georgia's a threat there. So, you offer his brother early, and I mean early. I think that shows some good love towards the Sabs. And maybe that's what makes Keon commit. You never know.
That's a huge factor. I mean, they offer his brother. That's a huge thing. And then when he gets on campus, he's going to be blown away. I mean, there's nothing to not be blown away at UGA. And then you open this brand new facility and it ramps that up by 10 as well. So it's going to be a fun month. I mean, I think we're going to see, as some guys commit, you're going to see some guys possibly decommit. You get some. Obviously, we're going to do the defensive back shuffle probably. I think we get a few more DBs, and Deion Bowie might bounce on out of there as we were afraid of. He might bounce on over to Texas A&M. Who knows? It's going to be interesting. Jordan Bryant James, his recruitment's not over. I mean, I think he's solid, but UT's got to be somewhere in the mix there. And Vanderbilt would be stupid if they didn't try to get into it, but I don't think they're a real threat, to be honest with you. But
I don't see that happening.
No, I don't see that either. They're not ready for that. But I mean, you get guys. If you get Katron Allen committed, I don't know what that does to the running back commits. I don't know how many they take, or if if they take his commit and they're only going to take one, that lets us know how solid Jordan James was. So I'm also excited about Georgia Campbell. I mean, if we can stockpile edge rushers at the 6'3", 220, 230, 240 mold, I'm all for it. Like I'm all for racking up a bunch of Adam Andersons. That right there, Adam Anderson is going to be a huge part of in how we recruit those guys.
Like Aziz this past year, right?
Mm-hmm. Aziz this past year, I still, in my opinion, got robbed in the first round, but got robbed by not going first round. But I think he'll fit in great with Joe Judge and the Giants, and that's a different topic for a different podcast. We're unfortunately we're not the Big Blue podcast, so we can't really break down Aziz too much. But I'm excited to see him play. But going back to the outside linebacker position, I think that becoming more of a dynamic position, at least on one side, is going to be huge in recruiting, because you can get some really tall, athletic guys there that can really play, like Georgia Campbell, Jalen Walker in this class, Marcus Washington as well. Those guys are absolutely vital to the way Kirby's defense, or Dan Lanning's defense, however you want to describe it. They're crucial to making that thing go. And then I'm excited about Bear Alexander and Tyree West kind of being the next big duo on the defensive line. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are going to be that, and don't count out Devontae Wyatt either.
Can't do that.
And don't count out Zion Logue, apparently. He had a big spring game. So I'm excited about the defensive line position, and I'm excited about the recruiting we got going there. So it's going to be fun, and I want some of those, and I hope some of those guys are mixed in to some of these June visits to kind of be the extra cheerleader for this coaching staff, so that Georgia can get a few of these guys and get a few guys that they shouldn't, and maybe like an Arch Manning, which, hey, you're bold on that. I love it. I love the boldness. I'm kind of more of a wait and see guy on Arch Manning, because I think there's a lot of factors in there, but I think Georgia has just as good a shot as anybody else. When you look at that situation, but lots of excitement in the recruiting world coming up this month, or coming up. I say this month, June is pretty much upon us now. But
oh yeah, absolutely. So that's a good stopping point right there, right? Like I'm looking forward to every single day, almost every single weekend for sure, right? Of the June month, or month of June. Wow, I can't speak today. The month of June is going to be wild, right? Obviously. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to have a lasting impact on several classes. Obviously 2022, surely enough 2023, probably even 2024, just this month alone.
Yes.
But
2026 apparently.
Well, yeah. And 2026, we're being that serious. Yeah.
Sad. Yeah.
But hey, before we let you go, let everybody know where they can find you. I know you got your podcast. Tell everybody where they can find your work.
They can find it, anywhere you get a podcast: Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We're about to be on YouTube. You can find my personal Twitter at Coach Burton 36. You can find my show Twitter. We're the Bleav in Georgia Dawgs Podcast on the Bleav Podcast Network. You can find us at Bleav in Dogs. That's BLEAV in Dogs. You can find my co-host Israel Troop at TroopStar28 on all social media platforms. So find us, subscribe to us, and check us out, and stay tuned. I think I'm even going to get bold and get a Twitch. So I'm going to the video platforms here really soon.
I'm telling you, Twitch is where it's at, man. Twitch is where it's at. I love Twitch.
Hey, that's a good enough endorsement for me. I'm going to sign up for that before we launch. But sometime this summer, sometime around our 1-year anniversary as a show, I found Israel in September. I started up in like mid-June. So the 1 year
Yeah.
anniversary of our show is coming up. So I think we're going to launch video on that. So you can find me there. And you can also find me on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. I represent the Southeast and the Southeastern Conference on that show with Matt Perkins and Josh Cook. We go all over college football, but you can find us, Illegal Motion College Football Podcast, same places on the Bleav Network and anywhere you can get your podcasts.
There you go. Hey, go like and subscribe, man. I've listened to the work. I like it. But on that note, man, let's call it a wrap here. We've, had a good long conversation. Obviously, a lot to talk about. But
yes.
Hey, man, thanks again for coming on the show, and look forward to having you on again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and let's make it happen. Let's do some more home and homes. I want to get you on our show, especially when we go video. So
there you go.
Keep that in mind. So yeah, thanks for having me, and hey, go Dogs.
Attaboy, go Dogs. All right, guys, with that being said, going to call it a wrap for this episode of the Damn Good Dogcast. Make sure to like, subscribe on YouTube, on Twitch. And other than that goes, we'll hear you back in the month of June. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.